Hello everyone, today I'm going to do a book review. I'm going to talk about Jaws by Peter Benchley. Of course, the famous novel that had a very famous film adaptation made from it. But I hadn't read the novel in a long time. In fact, I think I hadn't read this novel since I was maybe 12 or 13. And I remember at the time thinking it wasn't like the movie, and I liked the movie better, and I still like the movie better, but it was weird to revisit something that you read when you were much younger, and then go back to it when you're much older. So probably some of the more adult stuff in the book, I was maybe didn't quite lock into that stuff as much, but yeah, Jaws, Peter Benchley. So just everyone knows what this book's about. This book is set on Amity Island, and what's interesting, the book is set on Long Island, I believe. It's not in like New England, Massachusetts, like in the movie. The movie was filmed at Martha's Vineyard. So this is set in Long Island. You have a beach community that relies on the summer for their economic well-being, and there's a series of shark attacks, rare shark attacks in this part of the ocean. And in response, you have Chief Martin Brody, who wants to shut the beaches down and is able to for a bit, but it's an agonizing decision. There's a lot of hostility in the town because they are losing their economic well-beings by closing the beaches. And of course there's that political side to the book. There's also a lot more personal stuff in the book, which I can get into a little bit, with Martin Brody and his marriage. We also have Matt Hooper, who is the shark expert who comes to Amity to try to help out. And there is Quint, who comes in later in the book, is the captain they hired to hunt down the shark. And you have Mayor Vaughn, who is the conflicted mayor of Amity. And then there's Meadows, who is the reporter character, who's also in the movie, but has a much kind of bigger role in the book anyway. So then we have the adventure side of the story, where they have to go out and try to kill the shark that's terrorizing their community. Now, this is loosely based on, in 1916, I believe there were a series of shark attacks in New Jersey, which were famous, and I believe Benchley in the introduction talks about it was that incident that happened, and he felt that what if a shark in the 1970s was terrorizing a town, and that's really what inspired the book. One thing the novel does is the economic reality. The book goes into a lot more detail about the economics of Amity, and just how closing the beaches just for a week will have a catastrophic effect on businesses and the well-being of the town. So we get a lot of that in the book, where Benchley goes into great detail how businesses are suffering, and then the ripple effects, how it's affecting everybody in the community. And you get the sense it's a far more working class type of community. Just a little details Benchley puts in about everyone going to the grocery store on bargain sale days, and even the Brody family is somewhat economically strapped, or they have to really budget their groceries and things like that. So that was interesting. I thought how the book gets into the economics of everything. There's also, with the mayor, there's a subplot with the mob, where the mayor is sort of tied up with the mob, and he realizes he's owes them money for something that happened a long time ago, and he also knows if the beaches aren't open, he could really be in big trouble with organized crime, that's not in the movie. Maybe hinted at in a superficial way in the movie with why Mayor Vaughn is doing what he's doing, but the book does a good job of that. There's also we get a lot more with the Brody family, in particular the Brody marriage between Ellen Brody and Martin Brody. And it's actually reversed from the movie, where in the movie, Brody, played by Roy Scheider, is an outsider in Amity. He's not. He's a New Yorker who's taken the job there to escape the city. And I believe in the movie, Ellen Brody, she's been an islander her entire life. In the book, that's different, where Martin Brody has lived on the island his entire life, and his wife is actually the one who's new to living on the island. And it gets in, the book gets into social class stuff, like, and the pressures on their marriage, where Ellen Brody came from a somewhat more wealthier family, you might say, and she married a policeman, and they're in their 30s, or I believe Martin Brody is like in his early 40s, and she's in her mid 30s, and she's kind of questioning, like, did she say goodbye to this life she had before by marrying a policeman? Like, she could have married a lawyer or someone with more social status. So that's kind of a thing in the book, and as infamously Matt Hooper character is also in the movie, played by Richard Dreyfuss. And in the book, there is this flirtation between Hooper and Mrs. Brody, and which leads to some other things, which if you read the book, you know what I'm talking about. But I think all the characters in the book are a lot harder edged than they are in the movie, which I found kind of interesting. Like, everyone's kind of crabby and sarcastic to each other in the book, especially Brody, who's kind of he dishes out a lot of sarcasm, to everybody, and he's not the most likable character, but nobody is too likable in the book necessarily. Even Quint is made really unlikable in the book. Like, we know that Quint, we learn in the book that he's doing illegal things fishing. He is going after endangered species, and he doesn't really care. So it does make you appreciate the movie more, I think, where they really smoothed out the rough edges of the novel. We know the film script went through many different versions. Benchley worked on the script, and others were brought in to work on the script a lot. Carl Gottlieb, who played Meadows in the movie, did a lot of working with Spielberg with the script. But it's almost a case. I know some people will go to bat for the book and say that the book is better than the movie. I don't know if it's in a case that the book is better, but the book does flesh out some details that aren't really in the movie, where we get a lot more of a feel for the community. But I think the movie does a good job of that as well. So, and how the movie handled the hunt for the shark was a lot more interesting. Even in the characters, like in the book, Brody and Hooper really can't stand each other, but in the movie that's not the case. They basically get along fine in the movie. Of course, there's tension with Quint, but even Quint, through Robert Shaw's performance, is made a much more likable character than he is in the book. So. And I know some people like the ending of the book. The way the shark dies in the book is probably more realistic, the way the shark dies in the book, as opposed to the more fantastical way it happened in the movie. And the movie as well brought the fantastic elements, I think, into the story, whether it was through the music, through the way the shark attacks were staged in the film, which are very cinematic. In the book, Benchley kind of gets a little more graphic about the shark attacks and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, it was interesting to revisit the novel. It's a very readable novel. It really is. I mean, it's well written, and actually my favorite chapter is this dinner party chapter at the Brody house, where people are invited, like Hooper and Meadows, and Martin Brody is at the party, and he's kind of getting a little bit plastered during the party, and it was really a great party scene, I thought, in the book, which is not in the movie at all. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the book that kind of brings a texture to the movie, but also one of those classic cases of how to adapt a book and make it more feasible for a mass audience. I can see another director, like I was thinking, like William Friedkin. I could see him being interested in being a bit more loyal to the book, where the corruption angle but even like the corruption of the families and all this, I could see a director like Friedkin really be interested in that. Whereas, as I said, in the novel, it smooths out a lot of those rough edges that are there with the characters in the book too. So just like the way Spielberg focuses on children, and the children are here in the book, but they're very nondescript. The way the children are in the book, the Brody children. There's a famous scene in the movie where Brody has had a really hard day, where the mom slaps him or tells him off, her kid was killed by the shark, and that scene is actually in the book, but not the scene later that night where Brody in the movie, him and his son kind of have this nice moment between them, and and even in the beach scenes, Spielberg focuses on children a bit more in the beach, which is interesting too. Like, even in the movie, the mayor has a kid who was like affected by the shark attacks, but we could really get no sense of that in the novel too. So it's just really fun to compare the movie and the book. And as I said, the stuff in the novel I liked the best was the non-shark related stuff. More of like the soap opera type stuff, and that was happening. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Jaws by Peter Benchley. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.